Right now, in social studies, we're learning about the growth of the Republic, and we just finished learning about the Revolutionary War, and that sort of time period, and the Revolutionary War was pretty fun.
We're learning about how cotton had affected the amount of slaves like in different areas.
How some of the Native Americans didn't like the English settlers.
I'm learning about enslaved people and like the indigenous people and tribes.
Our first lesson that we've done, we got to make maps of our countries. It was really fun because we got to do it hands-on with paper, and we got to color it in the end.
So Investigating History is a new social studies program that was created by the Department of Education and Secondary Education. And Broadmeadow and Newman are piloting this year just in 5th grade.
It's been written by Primary Source. We really like their materials. It's also been vetted through DESE, and that's been really exciting as well.
It includes 4 units of study that basically go from early America through the civil rights movement and the struggle for civil rights for all.
It's an inquiry-based social studies program. It has slideshows that are ready to go, picture books ready to go, a lot of group projects for my students, really helping them to develop into critical and creative historians.
It does a really great job of covering all of the Massachusetts state standards for 5th grade social studies, and is put together in a way that is really easy for teachers to navigate.
We are one of 38 districts from across Massachusetts who is implementing Investigating History in 5th grade this year, and it has been a resounding success according to the kids.
I really liked doing all our projects and hands-on crafts and things that we've been doing.
There's a lot of fun worksheets, and we got to create our own map too.
The best part is that we get to get in groups and we get to talk about it, so we can share our opinions.
It's very interesting learning about all this stuff that I never knew before.
I thought dressing up as Abigail Adams was a lot of fun, and we got to make objects and find objects.
I really like the country, design your own country. That was pretty fun, and we had what would our country's values be, what would its economic interests be, and I found that pretty fun.
I enjoy partner work a lot. We also get to present a lot of stuff, so it makes social studies more fun. And last year and years before, we didn't have an option to do social studies. So I'm very happy to learn social studies this year.
I see a difference in my students and the way they receive this information and the way they come to social studies, and they're excited and they're engaged, and they ask a lot of questions and they do a lot of digging, and I think that is something that is different than what I've seen in the past, and the curriculum really sets them up for this work.
So if you have found that you didn't get to jot anything down for previous vocab words, you can certainly do that at another time. But we're going to continue on. We've been talking a bit about cotton. And before we left for vacation, I had mentioned that we're going to learn a bit about this invention called the cotton gin. Right? And so before we even get started, I think it's important for us to think about what is an invention. What is an invention?
Something that someone to invent something is to make something that hasn't been made, to make something that's unique.
Oh, I like that word, unique. You want to add on to that?
It's a lot like just put something that has never been used before, and that you're trying to have made it up and nobody else
Absolutely. Izzy.
It's like your idea, you own it, you're the one who created it.
Absolutely. So take a look at the screen. This is a definition of invent and invention. You'll notice that they are in your glossary. So to invent something means to create or design something that has not existed before. And an invention is a useful new device that is created to meet a need or a want. Okay? So if I use the word invent in a sentence, I would say she wanted to invent a machine that would allow her to travel back in time. And if I use the word invention, his new invention saved people time, but harmed the environment. So if you want to think of something you might draw for an invention, to invent, go ahead and add your picture or words there if you would like. So we're going to move on from that. And I want you to think about this question. Do you think inventions are good or bad for society? What are your thoughts on this, okay?
They could be either because someone could make like an invention that could hurt somebody, or it could also be an invention that could like possibly help someone.
Absolutely. Gina, I saw your hand up. What do you think?
I was gonna say
Say the same thing? Yeah, a lot of people agree with that. Lucy?
well, I agree with Kay, but I also feel like I'm kind of like saying what she said, but just like in different words. Like, I feel like when you make something, it's pretty much like what you like it's your idea, what you wanted to do, and it helps not you but also other people. And sometimes it's hard to like invent something that is good for everyone. So basically like every invention has pros and cons. Like
Awesome. Awesome. I couldn't have said it better myself. You know, the ways that inventions are used really determines whether they're good or bad for society. So we're going to spend this lesson thinking about one particular invention. I think we know what that invention is, right?
yeah.
Cotton gin, okay? So this is a machine that was called the cotton gin, and we're going to look at the way it affected the United States and its people. We're specifically going to look at enslaved African Americans and how this specific invention really affected them. We're going to be watching a video that's going to teach you a little bit more about the cotton gin, but as you watch, I want you to look for evidence in response to this question, okay? The question that you're going to be thinking about is how did the invention of the cotton gin affect slavery in the United States, okay? So I want you to think specifically when you're learning about the invention of the cotton gin, I want you to be thinking about how do you think that affected slavery in the United States? Okay, got that question up here. Ready to go for some information? Okay.
Knowing that this peculiar institution contradicted the ideals and principles for which they fought the revolution. But both men believed that slavery was going to die out as the 19th century dawned. They were, of course, tragically mistaken. The reason was an invention, a machine they probably told you about in elementary school, Mr. Eli Whitney's cotton gin. In 1790, about 3,000 bales of cotton were produced in America each year. A bale was equal to about 500 pounds. By 1801, with the spread of the cotton gin, cotton production grew to 100,000 bales a year.
First, you're going to talk about why did Eli Whitney invent the cotton gin, okay? And it has a picture there that you're going to use to help explain it. The cotton gin was invented in 1794. What happened to the number of bales of cotton produced after the invention of the cotton gin? And you're going to take a look at that table that is going to help you with that question, okay? How did the number of enslaved African Americans in the U.S. change after the invention of the cotton gin in 1794? So you're going to take a look at that chart to help you answer that question. Why do you think the narrator of the video said that cotton was king? So think about that question. And who or what do you think cotton was the king of? Okay? So I'm going to have you work with your seat partners Avi, you, Nora, and Izzy can work as a threesome, okay? Otherwise, you're working with the person next to you, okay? So you can turn and talk with your partners as you go through these questions.
Enslaved African Americans definitely grew. The reason is because of the cotton genie, they could buy more of those cotton genies for those African Americans to spin. And there's need more African Americans to harvest and grow the cotton. Therefore, there's need more African Americans to spin the wheels and to put the cotton in. Then there should be more African Americans to do the whole process of it all over again.
It was basically the most sold through the span. It was 100 years. Like it's the price,
And it was also
went up
sold
to
a
like
lot.
4 million. It was the most sold product in America.
People bought it for a lot of money because they probably didn't want to have to make it for like 10 hours rather than just like getting it and just paying for it.
When they made the cotton gin, then cotton sort of made the slavery population increase a lot, and the cotton was manufactured a lot, and there was lots of cotton to sell. So I think it really drove America's economy.
So what would you say about the number of bales of cotton produced after the invention of the cotton gin? What would you say about that, Max?
How big is a bale?
How big is a bale? That's a really good question. I would need to look right there where it says a bale of cotton weighs about 500 pounds.
Wow.
That's a lot of cotton, right?
Picture if you.
So would you say the number of bales of cotton increased or decreased after the invention?
It probably kept increasing.
I would say so, right? How about the number of enslaved African Americans? Did that number increase or decrease? What would you say, Avi?
It definitely increased.
Definitely increased, right? If you're looking at the numbers here, definitely increased. Why do you think the narrator of the video said that cotton was king? Why do you think they said that? And?
Because after it getting bigger and bigger and having more of it, they were probably selling more of it and making more money for the U.S.
Yes, very good thinking. Okay, what would you say?
It was like the most valuable and most sold product.
That's busy.
Kind of like how Kay said, and to show how it was in higher demand, like rather than any other product that the U.S. was like producing and selling.
Excellent. Who or what do you think cotton was the king of? What do you think about that? Tess?
I think that cotton was the king of the resources because cotton could be turned into clothes and fabric, and it's very valuable.
Absolutely. What would you add to that, Lucy?
I said that cotton was the king of the market, kind of, because everyone wanted to buy it and use it for fabric because it was this new thing that, like, it was just like there was so much more of it. It was like it was producing so much faster, so it was kind of everybody wanted to buy it.
Great. Lydia?
I think cotton was the king of the slaves because that's all they did, like all day. That's the only thing that they ever did. Like they never got to do anything else.
Very interesting way to think about that. Yes, very interesting. Nora?
Because like cotton was the king of money because it was very valuable and it gave America three-fifths of America's money.
Awesome. Really good thinking here today, you guys. Let's look at this question. What do you think happened to all the cotton that was harvested and processed by enslaved African Americans using the technology of the cotton gin? What do you think happened to all of that? June?
Sorry. I think that like a lot of people, like the wealthy people, bought it and like used it for making like clothes and stuff.
You're absolutely right. The cotton, of course, is going to be sold. So who do you think is going to buy the cotton? Nora?
Probably wealthy people because it was highest in demand, so it would probably be the most expensive.
Okay. Okay. What would you like to add on to that, Izzy?
Yeah, kind of like I said, like wealthy people or people who are like not like necessarily slaves, but like maids or stuff for the wealthy people because like he made the cotton so they could produce more cotton, so they could make more clothes and like blankets and like necessities around the house or something. So workers for wealthy people could have bought it, so they could have like, gave more stuff to working people, so they were paid more.
Awesome. What do you think they plan to do with it? We talked a little bit about that, but who wants to kind of grow that thinking? What are they going to do with it, Ethan?
They're going to process it. Before the Industrial Revolution, they used non-powered looms, but after the Industrial Revolution, they used the invention known as the powered loom, which also increased the production of processed cotton by, I'm guessing, more than tenfold.
Awesome, Ethan. Yes, you're right. That was another really important invention that helped with that. What else do you think they plan to do with it? Any other thoughts? And
like make clothing for people, and probably shops would buy it too that like make clothes.
And Ethan talked a little bit about where we think that's going to happen. Who wants to talk a little more about that? Go ahead, Tess.
I think that where it will happen is like maybe in factories because it's like like chocolate factories are like making chocolate, and then cotton factories will be like cleaning the cotton, harvesting, not really harvesting, but just doing more stuff with it.
You're absolutely right. So the cotton is going to be bought by people that wanted to turn it into cloth. And that was happening in the factories that we talked about. So if you take a look here, you'll notice these are all bales of cotton that is on this train. And they are being transported so that they can go to the factories to be turned into cloth. Okay? These are bales of cotton that is being transported by ship. Okay? So remember we talked about how important the waterways were during this time. Okay, it's helping not only to move people, but to move resources. Okay, so this is the cotton bales. It's a lot of cotton bales, right? So when we're thinking about how much cotton is being produced, this is a really good visual for us. Okay. This is a port in New Orleans. Remember, we acquired the port of New Orleans from the French. Okay. And this is where they are shipping the cotton. This is a major port where cotton comes and goes. And so you see all of these different areas. This is the mill worker that is spinning cotton. And Ethan, I think this is a little bit about what you were talking about, right? The machine that is helping to spin this cotton into cloth that in turn will be able to be used to make clothing. Okay, so very important invention here. And this is a spinning mill that's actually located in Lowell, Massachusetts. You can actually go there today and visit it. Okay, so they had a lot of factories in Lowell where cloth was made. So a lot of cotton was shipped into Lowell and it was used in these factories, okay? So now we're gonna take a look at this map. And I wanna tell you first a little bit about what you are going to see, okay? So each of these are icons that show where factories are located, okay? And they represent the location of a cotton spinning mill, okay? Different colors represent different states in New England, okay? So we are going to see cotton mills in Connecticut, in Maine, in Massachusetts, in New Hampshire, and in Rhode Island, okay? I want you to remember that these were all free states, okay? Or states where slavery was not legal, okay? Okay, so keep that in mind. That is an important note to remember. If I were to click on one of these icons, it's going to take me to the location of the mill. So there was a cotton mill located in Waltham. Okay, not very far from us. If we go further west, this is in a place called Coleraine, Massachusetts. We can go down to Rhode Island, Pawtucket. Okay, that is a location of another mill. How about up here in New Hampshire? We have Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Okay. If we go a little bit further out, we can see that there are mills located in Maine as well. Now that you're seeing all of these locations, think about what happened to the cotton. How did cotton connect the economies of the North and South in the United States? And also, how did New England support the institution of slavery, even though it was not legal in those states?
It showed that the cotton increased in the amount of it used to be, and now that there's a lot of cotton around the world now. Yeah.
That map is important because it shows people without prior knowledge on the subject that it wasn't just the southern states contributing to the problem of slavery in the U.S. Because where we live in New England, we could just say, oh, well, slavery was illegal here. We don't need to learn about this or talk about it. But we still do because we were partially responsible for the problem of slavery because of the cotton mills in New England.
It showed how, even in the states without slavery, they still were producing cotton and at the cotton factories, even without slavery.
The slaves were making cotton, and they were helping make the cotton.
Were they picking it?
The slaves were picking it.
Yes, right.
And they were using what the slaves were doing to their advantage.
Yeah. They're growing the cotton in the South. It's coming up to the North, and that's where they're taking that cotton and turning it into cloth, right? So this final question here is a really important one. How did New England support the institution of slavery, even though it wasn't legal in those states? How is it still supporting the institution of slavery? Go ahead, Laura.
Even though slavery is illegal and without even doing anything, it still supported it because it's like, oh, well, Massachusetts is having, if everybody's still having all of these, cotton factory, then it's like, we should keep doing this and make this a thing. But to do that, you need cotton, which comes back to the slaves. The slaves picked the cotton, so it's kind of the same.
You're absolutely right. How are the cotton cloth factories in New England related to the enslaved African Americans? And then how do the enslaved African Americans, how can we relate that to the cotton gin? Okay, you're gonna think about who benefits and who is harmed.
The goal of the curriculum is to help students understand a pluralistic history of this country and understand the diverse contributions of the many people who have lived and currently live in this nation.
Who wasn't in the room? Who were the voices of folks who were not at the table doing that writing? Why were they not there? How did they try to get their voices and their opinions heard? So that theme of really empowering all folks, it cuts through across every unit in investigating history, and that's what makes it really exciting to teach.
This version includes how Indigenous people felt when the white Americans were taking over their land and how enslaved people felt when they weren't in the room to create the United States Constitution. And so for students to see why our America was shaped this way and how it was shaped, it ignored so many voices to show them that this is what women believed, this is what Indigenous people believed, and this is what enslaved people wanted. They wanted to be free. And so to show them is really important that it wasn't just white men that shaped our country.
They are explaining to me that they're learning so much that they never even knew about before.
I was really surprised how people were treated with being enslaved. I felt so bad because it was hard to learn that this used to be like people of us, we used to do this back then to different people, and it was just, we're all human, and it just feels so weird to know that that happened.
Rich were treated differently from the poor, black were treated differently from the white, men from women. So it's a lot different from our common period right now.
Slavery had become like such a big thing, and many people were supporting it, and they never thought about like, what if I was in their shoes, and like, how would I feel?
I think that it was really interesting and also kind of sad how many people were enslaved and how people were cheated. But I think that it was interesting to learn about it because sometimes you don't get to see as many people involved in what we're learning about. We learned a lot about Thomas Jefferson, and we learned that he actually owned a bunch of slaves, but he wanted to abolish slavery, and that was really interesting to me, that he wanted to do that even though he was one of the people owning slaves.
For so long, history was told from one perspective. And what I really like about this curriculum is that it is now being told from different perspectives, and the students are thinking about how that affects all of the people involved.
They have a lot of opportunities to engage in learning from their own lenses. And so they're able to look through different primary sources and secondary sources, and they're able to ask questions.
Each day I'll kind of emphasize the essential questions, and at the end of the lesson I'll ask students, which question do you think we learned about today? And so showing them that each little lesson leads up to a bigger thought or idea.
The topic of today's lesson, foreign policy decisions in the Northwest Territory. There's a lot to unpack there. Foreign policy decisions in the Northwest Territory. So, this map, and historians, you've seen this map before. This map is showing, you tell me, historians, what is this map showing? Go for it, Emily.
It's showing the states and territories and like the countries in color.
Beautiful job. It's showing the states, which were formerly colonies. They are now states on different colors. Yeah, Ella, add to that, please.
Well, it looks like Vermont wasn't a thing before. Maybe New Hampshire was, I don't remember. Or the Erie Triangle look like they're new things.
Yeah, okay, so there's some things that aren't there of what we know are there now. You got it. Great observation. And Zach, last thought.
There's two disputed areas. It's like between Spain and the United States, and I think it said the UK up there.
Yep, there's some disputed. There's some territory that we're kind of still negotiating about. I want you to focus, historians, on the brownish area that says unorganized territory. So make sure your eyes are looking at that brownish area that says unorganized territory. Look at the question, please, at the bottom of this screen. Hey, Evan, could you read that for us, my friends?
What do you think will happen with unorganized territory after the American Revolution? Why?
Okay, so the American Revolution is over. The colonies are now states. The unorganized territory, the United States wants to make that into states. Would you please do a quick turn and talk with somebody sitting next to you? What do you think will happen?
They're going to try, after somebody in the American Revolution, they're going to just like completely ignore the Native American tribes and just like take them.
Let's hear a couple of turn and talks. Make those public.
Those indigenous people wouldn't have a home to live in, like their homework get taken away, like their heritage and.
Okay. So Coco's saying there were so many Me Too's, Coco, that the indigenous people will no longer have a home or a culture. I put Jackson on deck.
I don't know. I think they're gonna try to claim the land to the the states. And I don't think they're probably not gonna do it peacefully.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably gonna try to fight because I don't think the Native Americans want to give them that land.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Can I push a little further? Jackson, you're saying you don't think it's going to happen peacefully. What are you basing that on?
Well, I don't think the Native Americans want to give them their land, and I don't think the Americans are just gonna go away after that.
Were the foreign policy decisions of the early republic shaped by its declared values or other interests? So there's a lot to unpack there. Do me a favor. On your sheet, would you kindly, where it says early republic, find that please in the big gray box? Okay, so where it says early republic, that means the first 50 years of the United States. So that language, so we're going to say first 50 years. Even I had to kind of research that. Historians, I'm like, what's the difference between the early republic and the regular republic? So it's really talking about the first 50 years. Okay. So what is the United States government thinking of in this first 50 years? All right. Security. Where you see the word security, protecting borders and territory, would you draw a little picture, don't worry, of a lock? Security. Historians, why do you think we're doing a lock to kind of just help us think about that word? Yeah, Coco.
Maybe to show that you have protection, you have a lock.
Okay, you have protection. Something's locked, you have protection. You got it. Are they making decisions based on economic decisions? So I'm going to do some dollar signs. Economy. Oh my goodness, this is my next one, my favorite. Declared values. Historians, you just created your own countries, right, last week, really fun. And remember we talked about what are the values that you would want to have in your newly created country?
Everybody's welcome.
Okay, so no violence, everybody's welcome. Our founding fathers, and we know who those folks were, our founding fathers said that our declared values in the United States, here they are, and they should be familiar to you historians. Go for it, Nolan, read those for us.
Liberty, equality, democracy, and equality.
Okay, they sound familiar to you?
I remember the book that I read about Thomas Jefferson.
Okay.
The title had
We the people on the title, yeah, good. Citizens provide opportunities for people. I'm just going to draw a little stick figure. Citizens to represent a person. These are your groups, your partners. So in just a second, I'm going to release you to get yourself in a situation where you're shoulder to shoulder with your partner. With your partner, I'm going to be showing you some situations, and then you and your partner are really going to have to talk about these foreign policy decisions, okay? Don't worry, I'll explain it when we get to the first situation. With your partner, you are going to have to discuss. Do you think the situation, the decision, was based around, what are these again, my friends? Declared values. Was the decision based around declared values, or was a decision based around security, citizens, or economy? You and your partner are going to talk. If the U.S. chose this option, what would it be its foreign policy priority? Okay, so here comes option one.
I think it should be sell it to U.S. citizens to pay off debts for the American.
Yeah, I think it's economy. They kind of care about the money to sell it to the, because every like war or battle costs a lot of money. So to sell it to the U.S. to like pay
And
off
if they
debts.
don't pay off their debts, then they could get like in a lot of trouble with like France and
Yeah, and
everyone
their
they
other
take
like
loans out.
yeah.
So I think economy.
Yeah, probably economy.
It could also be citizens because citizens, the label is providing opportunities for students or people. And by selling it to U.S. citizens, it's providing opportunities to expand and get bigger and better houses and farms
I think it's
and
also
stuff.
just because so then they can get like more stuff out of it too. So it's citizens, so it's like helping them, but also like giving them money too. So I think it could be citizens and economy.
Okay, groups who chose economy, that this was driving the foreign policy decision. Could you raise your hands? Economy. Okay, look at the data. Historians, look around the room. Most every group. Citizens, raise your hands, please, groups. Interesting. Again, look at the data. Security, any groups? No. Declared values. Ooh, interesting. What does that data tell us? No hands were raised. Go for it, Zach.
Well, because like the equality, they wouldn't be treating the indigenous people as equals because use force if necessary. That is definitely not treating them as equals, and they're not like giving them like their freedom.
You got it. And a bunch of people just Me Too'd you. That use force if necessary goes against, in my opinion, everything that those declared values state. All right, here we are, historians. We are now on your graphic organizer. The next block, that's option 2. Okay, what if they did this? Here comes option 2. Talk with your partner.
I think it's declared values and citizens because it's treating, for declared values, it's treating the indigenous people like respectfully.
Yeah.
And that goes with what their declared values are.
Yeah.
And it's still helping the citizens
because they're getting
the land.
Yeah.
And so,
But
and I don't think it's economy because you're paying for it, and so you're not really gaining anything with your economy. And security,
you're not protecting.
Yeah, you're not really protecting your land.
I don't know how many years after the war this was, but it can't be that many. So they probably still don't have a lot of money.
Okay.
So if they went option 1, they would get money out of it and more land.
Okay, and they need to pay off that debt.
Yeah.
Here comes the big reveal, historians. The United States decided to buy the land rather than take it. Okay, wait a minute. What? Wait, reactions. What?
Seems like the liberal
You're connecting to something else. However, the indigenous nations did not want to sell the land in the Northwest Territory. U.S. settlers pushed into this land anyway.
Of course they did.
The settlers cleared the land, built houses, planted crops on the land that was the Northwest Territory. This land did not belong to the United States. Oh my goodness. Reactions, historians. Harlan, go for it. Harlan and then Coco, yeah.
So they decided to buy it, but then when they said the indigenous people said they didn't want to sell it, they just decided they were going to take it anyway.
Kind of crazy, huh? Yeah, Coco asked that.
I thought it was option 1 only because there's not much indigenous people really around today.
Oh, interesting. Coco was connecting because you thought it was option one because you are not seeing as many Indigenous people today, currently. So you think those decisions impacted?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Historians, you are now on the third square. Here comes the situation. Again, you're going to talk with your partner. Okay. In response to these Indigenous folks who now have guns and weapons, here comes option A. Send the state militias to the Northwest Territory to remove the settlers. Okay, back up for a second. Militias. What does that word mean, militias? Yeah, Maddie W.
It means like they're like armies, like.
You got it. You got it. So army or military, Jan. These are state militias, though. So send in the state militias to remove the settlers. Tell the settlers to stay off the land until the U.S. has negotiated treaties. Avoid an expensive war that the U.S. cannot afford. Remind U.S. citizens that they must respect the rules and decisions of the government that they helped to create. Okay, go for it. Talk to your partner.
US were not doing our war because after the British, they still kind of stole land from them because they didn't have money. Yeah, and now they're still in debt.
And when we talk to the students, that they are learning stories that have not been told before. They're learning about the Middle Passage. They're learning about beautiful African cultures and enslaved people and what happened. They are learning about the folks who were not in the room. Why were those voices not heard? They're learning about the Bill of Rights and why women were not given the right to vote until 1920. Those are stories that for many of us, when we went through fifth grade, social studies were not told, and in my opinion, those are stories that need to be told for our historians now to really help shape decision making for the future.
So this is not the American history necessarily that I learned as a kid growing up in the 90s. This is the story of all of the different peoples that have lived in this country, as opposed to just one single narrative. And that was hugely important to us. And so we decided to move forward with this curriculum.
I am very curious to learn more. I really like the Revolutionary Unit because it was cool because I watched the musical hit.
I want to learn more about like the different stages of cotton. Like they said that it grew a lot and slavery was like needed a lot, but like was it too much work that like only slaves could do it? And like where did cotton come from? Why was cotton so popular? Stuff like that.
I want to learn more about the American Revolution and a lot of the battles because I find it interesting that like they were so outnumbered and like outskilled, but they still found a way to come back and win their independence from Great Britain.
Thomas Jefferson and how he was like famous for saying that he wanted to abolish slavery, but then once you get into his backstory and that he owned so many slaves and like he actually was like a hypocrite.
I want to learn more about who kind of brought it all together and who led them to be like for the United States to become the United States and like how it all ended up.
The students love it. They say that they're learning history that they didn't know, that they're getting to ask big questions, and they're learning the skills to find the answers to those questions.
What I found that is very exciting about it is that primary source and investigating history, there are slideshows that are totally curated that go with each one of our lessons.
And the slides have notes There are, special ed modifications in there. There are handouts.
Any extra things that you need is embedded in that format. And so it's a very succinct way of presenting this information.
I think it's just like with any type of a new program, the more you kind of dig in deeper, it'll become more comfortable. And in addition, we piloted this year with a small cohort of folks. We now can help the folks who are going to be starting it next year.
I like the stories because it's cool to see how it's changed and all the people back then and how those people can be like, we can be like either one of us can be like the people of this like time period right now. So it's cool to know that you can make change by saying what you believe.